Vacation Bible School, and I learned something about the story of Joseph. Joseph as in Joseph and the coat of many colors. That has been our theme all week, is the Joseph cycle from the book of Genesis, and talking about what happened to him. And Joseph, many of you may recall, is famous because of his dreams. He has a dream that all of his older brothers bow down to him, and they're not happy about that because they say there's no way. Number 11 out of 12 sons, he is not going to be the ruler of them. He interprets dreams according to God, and ultimately is the one to tell Pharaoh what the dream is of Pharaoh. So there is all kinds of dreams. We'll talk about that as we go along. But one thing that goes throughout the Joseph cycle, and that I was really surprised that I hadn't thought about before, is that Joseph, everything good that happened to him because he was really good at organizing things. The Joseph story is that Joseph, when he was growing up, unlike his brothers who were out with the sheep, he was the one who was doing all the book learning and learning how to keep everything organized and everything on the farm. And it turns out that's really necessary, and he did a good job at it. So much so that when his brothers, in a fit of jealousy, throw him into a pit and then decide, what do we get out of that? We get rid of him, but we don't get anything in return, and then sell him as a slave because they get rid of him and they get money as well. They sell him into slavery in Egypt, and when he gets there, eventually he becomes really important for a slave. He serves Potiphar, who is one of the most important servants to Pharaoh, and one of the reasons he rises so highly in the ranks, even as a slave, is because he's really good at organizing things. And Potiphar turns to really lean on him. So much so that even when Joseph is thrown in prison because Potiphar's wife, who has fallen for Joseph, is mad because he doesn't return her affections and lies about him, he gets thrown into prison. And the Bible even tells us that even in prison, the guards realize he has this ability to organize things. And so he ends up running the prison, basically. So then when he has given one gentleman, one other prisoner, an interpretation of a dream and then an interpretation to another one, he gets this reputation for being an interpreter of dreams. And one day he's pulled out of prison by Pharaoh because Pharaoh has had several very strange dreams. The most spectacular one being that he dreams that 7 cows come out of the Nile, but these aren't just any cows. They are beautiful, fat, luscious, wonderful cows. And the 7 cows feed on the bank of the Nile. And then out of the Nile come 7 scrawny, ugly, horrific-looking, diseased-looking cows. And they come out of the Nile and eat the big fat cows. And therefore, you would think that they would get large themselves, but they don't. They're still skinny, scrawny, ugly cows. And Joseph famously tells Pharaoh that what that means is there's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. Joseph, being an organizer, says, you know what God is telling you. You need to have somebody who's really good at organizing things to take 1/5 of all the food in each of the years of plenty and put it into storehouses. And then when the years of famine come, instead of starving to death, all of Egypt will have food to eat. And Pharaoh says, I know just the guy. That's you, Joseph. Joseph went from being a slave in Egypt to a prisoner for many years in Pharaoh's dungeons, to then becoming the second most important person in Egypt. I tell you all of this because in our gospel story today with Martha and Mary, Martha is the organizer. And I don't want you to think that being organized or doing things in an organized way or getting things together and making things happen is in something a bad way. I mean, Joseph certainly did very well for himself. And frankly, saved the lives of thousands and thousands of people who would have died for starvation if it weren't for his ability if you were traveling in the ancient world, hospitality was a big part of that. There wasn't a hotel, there wasn't a Holiday Inn, there weren't restaurants. They were just, you needed to have people be the ones to give you hospitality. And it says that Jesus entered a village and Martha extends hospitality to him. Now, if you're anything like me, when you have guests coming to stay in your house, or even just coming for dinner, you probably do a lot of things to get ready for it. You might clean extra specially good that one time. You're going to put out fresh sheets and make sure they have all kinds of things that they might need. You're going to feed them well. You're going to be very organized. And nothing gets more disorganized than if somebody shows up even early and you go, no, I'm not ready yet. We have all the things that need to happen for somebody to come in. And it's really easy to get distracted in a situation like that and be thinking about, oh, the sheets and the food and and forget to just enjoy your guests. And that's kind of what's happening in this passage from Luke. Martha has extended hospitality to Jesus, and that requires work. It requires organizing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with Martha being put out that her sister Mary is sitting there doing nothing. Or apparently doing nothing. When she says to Jesus, did you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. And Jesus, in a very loving way, this is not a chastisement, he says, Martha, Martha. There's actually a name for that. It's a dual name, and it means that he is saying it in an affectionate way. He's saying it in a way out of care for her. In other words, he's kind of saying, bless her heart. He says, you're worried and distracted by many things. Mary has chosen the better part. I like that. Organizing and doing are important. What Jesus is trying to illustrate, though, so is being. So is this moment that Mary has as a disciple at his feet, and how really impressive it is that a woman is the one who's named as being the disciple who is learning from him. Martha is so caught up in the doing that she has forgotten to just enjoy Jesus' company or to learn from him. I would say also Mary is a little too tied up in the learning and not enough in the helping out. Because what we learn from the Joseph story in the end is that it's not about being one or the other. When Joseph's brothers, and the famine hits Canaan hundreds of miles away, when they come to buy food from Egypt and they meet this, I learned this, I have to share it, they meet Zaphenath-Paneah, which is Joseph's Egyptian name. When they come to him and ask to buy food, they don't recognize him. You think, how could they not recognize the brother? Well, because now he's bald, and he's been shaved, and he has makeup, and wearing Egyptian clothes, and he has an Egyptian name, and the Bible tells us he speaks to them in Egyptian through a translator. He doesn't let them know who he is. There's a lot of family dramatics that go along in this section of the story, but in the end, he says to his brothers, I am your brother Joseph. And it's okay, because God really intended for me to be here, doing this work and saving the lives of all these people in Egypt and beyond. You would think that maybe that would lose his status in Egypt, because now he has kind of set himself out as a Hebrew. He's set himself out as a foreigner and once a slave. But Pharaoh is thrilled that Joseph's family have come. As a matter of fact, he invites them to come and live there and gives them beautiful grazing land in Goshen and Joseph brings his father Jacob, with whom he has had such a joyful reunion, and he brings him to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, everything you need, I will give you. And they live a tremendous life. And we see from that Joseph has it kind of both ways. He gets to be a Hebrew and the son of his father and to be with his brothers and their families. He also gets to be Zaphanath-Paneah, the one in Egypt who organized things, ran the vizier, as it were. Martha and Mary are there not to say that one is better than the other, but to remind us that it's not about being either or. I'm a Martha, some of us say. I'm a Mary, others say. The fact is we need to be both. We need time of doing. And we need time of being. When I first graduated from seminary and got my first job in a church, I said, every day I'm going to go into the church by myself and I'm going to say morning prayer. Every morning when I come to work, I will do that. And it lasted about 3 weeks. And not only that long because it was July and it was really quiet at church. Nothing much was going on. It's really easy to get caught up in the doing, making things happen. And that's important. Without it, we wouldn't be here today. But it's also important to take time to sit at Jesus' feet. We don't have to be either Martha or Mary. We don't have to have a choice between the two. As a matter of fact, both are called for. Jesus is a guest in Mary and Martha's house. It is important to treat him as such, to not only welcome him and give him everything he needs as a guest, but also to spend time with him. One of our prayers in our prayer book is for the right use of leisure. We hope that in this summer, if you're taking some time away, that you'll have some time not to do, but to be. To remind us that there is more to life